Cool. Here we go. Well, first, I want to welcome everybody to Scripting Fundamentals 2252 for the spring of 2024. Should be a fun semester. A little bit about myself. My name is Zach Whiten. I've been teaching this class for quite a few years now. I use Python and scripting every day at my day job. I'm a blue teamer. I'm a senior defender for the Department of Defense Agency and cyber defense. I do cybersecurity for a living. We write detections, anomalies, hunt down fun stuff, parse through logs all day, stop bad guys, find bad guys. We have a blast. If a lot of people ask me, do you really use this stuff every day? And my answer is yes, every day. The detections I write are partially in Python, partially in what's called a sim, which we'll talk more about throughout the class. It's not very detrimental to the course, but if you're going into cybersecurity, it's kind of important. Of the couple folks here, anyone going to the cybersecurity track or the ITSD kind of IT fundamental track?
Yeah.
So you're going cyber, Prince?
Cybersecurity.
Nice. Good. What about the other two? Corey, Kavita? Did I say that correctly with Kavita? Yes, awesome. That's good. Yeah, so cybersecurity is fun. It's near and dear to my heart, but I didn't start there. I started off as a firewall admin, then I was a hardcore network operator for a while, then I moved into systems, and then I did some development. Nice, stackable certs, well done. I did some system development or some software development, and then I moved over to cybersecurity, and I've been there for a long stale time. No, just kidding. It's always exciting. I did a bunch of red team stuff, bunch of defense stuff, hardened systems, all kinds of good stuff. So feel free to ask any wild questions throughout this class. It's always good to have a sidebar and relate how we could use scripting in the real world. All right, got some more people joining. Boop. So that's enough about me. You'll learn about me, and I'll learn about you as this course progresses. The fun part about this is we're going to dive right into cool. We're going to dive right into how the course is set up. So everyone seeing my screen that I'm sharing? Everybody see that? We good? Everybody see it?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So this is pretty much what you'll see when you jump into Blackboard for this class. One thing I try not to do after this week is flood you with announcements. At the very most, I try to keep it to 2 or 3 announcements a week at the very most. They're important. All the ones that are preliminary put up are extremely important. Start at the bottom, gives you a little overview of the class, about the lectures. This is important. Here's the entire zip, the book zipped, download it. Here is a template for your scripts. I'm such a nice guy, I give you a template for the script. Download it. I suggest you use this and the naming convention, because if you do not name the scripts correctly, I won't grade them. I'll tell you that you named it incorrectly and give you an opportunity to fix it. But attention to detail is important, especially with coding or scripting. This is by far not a programming class, but it's a gateway drug to programming. I had many students over the years during this class change their major to the software developer track that Columbus State has to offer. I teach this in a very real way, less theory, more doing. You'll never see a slide in this class. It'll always be me typing and doing everything live. That's a good way for you to see the errors and understand and how to read the errors, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. This is where you want to make mistakes. It's a learning environment. If you weren't here, you already know it, and you wouldn't need to be here. Then I would have a job. But but in reality, this is a safe place to make mistakes. My job here is to point you in the right direction, foster you, get you into critical thinking mode, right? So the book is right here. Template is right here. That's how you name them right here. If it's named incorrectly, I won't grade, right? The challenges we're going to go over in a minute. But the challenges right here, this is how you access them. Inside the course, the link is broke right now. I have a ticket in with support to fix it. But in the interim, you are to use one of these links. You see how that says Unit 1 right here? You guessed it, that's Unit 1's challenges. Where it says your username here, it's your username. Change it to your username. It's usually the first part of your email address at Columbus State. And if you don't know your username, ask me. I will tell you, right? So this is my practice username. We'll discuss challenges in a minute, but that's how you access them with these links, right? So read all prior announcements. Super important. Read them. Welcome to the first day of class. This is my post for the first day. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. This is the Zoom meetings. These are the days that we're going to be meeting up. Should be 16 total, give or take. Those of you that are here, awesome. This is not mandatory. You do not have to come to this Zoom meeting. They will be recorded and posted online afterwards. But statistics have shown, and my stats have shown, that those who show up and attend this live presentation often get A's in this class. You're here to ask questions, learn on the fly, and have a good time, right? And then as you scroll up, course materials ready to roll out, all this fun stuff. Any questions so far about the announcements? No, doing good. Okay. So we're going to go right to the syllabus. Syllabus of the week layouts right here, off to the left. Download it. It's a Word document. It tells you the expectations. Let's do that right now. I'll click on it. Go to my downloads. I'll just hit open. Wait a minute and open this. The critical thing that I want you to take away from this syllabus is that there's no mention of that we use Python as a tool here. Learning outcomes, different types of data, control structures, functions, methods, object-oriented programming, all these different things you could take to different languages with you. Python happens to be the tool of choice. And it's probably one of the top 3 most used programming languages in the world right now. And different ways I could check out the goals here. This is important. Critical thinking, time management, accountability and ethics, and effective communication. Nowhere there does it say scripting. Critical thinking is implied. In order to write a good script, you have to think critically, right? Time management, you have to do that on your own. I cannot manage your own schedule for you. Get good at knowing your weaknesses and altering your schedule to let you win. I used to be a procrastinator. I gave that up about 20 years ago. I learned how to change my schedule in order for me to be successful. And a lot of times I lose sleep, but it's worth it. Accountability and ethics. This is important in the age of AI. You're going to love this. AI is a tool. It's here to stay. I don't mind if you use it, but I mind how you use it. If you cut and paste the entire lab in there and dump it out, you're going to get back exactly what the class before you did and the class before you did, and you're going to turn it in, and I'm going to tell you you're cheating, and I'm going to show you that I already have copies of that script. Write your own code. The longest code you're going to write in this class is about 150 lines long, which is shorter than any paper in any English class you will ever write. Maybe more difficult thinking, critical thinking to get it done, but if you pay attention, work through each lesson, it becomes easy. Trust me, it really does. Back to AI. If you get stuck on a portion, contact me, use your book, use your classmates. Try to talk to somebody real before you pivot to Google or AI or Stack Overflow. Try to solve the problem yourself. That's part of critical thinking. Then You can move to AI if you want to. Don't just cut and paste like prompts. Design your own prompt. Learn how to use AI if you're going to use it. This is not a course on how to do that, but I can tell certain things about the way AI has been generating code. It's really easy to pick up. And I've been teaching this class for 7 years. I have a whole stack of links of every semester where someone tries to copy. I could don't share your script with someone and have them turn it in because they're running late. Tough love. Let them learn on their own. This is your competition too, by the way. Like in the real world, learn how to write this stuff. You're in this class, the fundamentals. It's on you, and I'm here to help you. So don't worry. And I'm not going to grade anything outside of the fundamentals. If you use something that is not mentioned in that week's lesson, you better put a comment in your code next to the topic that we never discussed or your book never discusses, the link to where you learned it from, and you better write an explanation of what it does. I highly suggest you do not do that because that is using something that's not a fundamental. You could solve all these problems with what's presented to you every week in every lesson. There's no gotchas in this class. You can solve every problem with what's covered in the book. And you should solve it that way because these are indeed the fundamentals that 90% of all scripts on the planet are made up of. So if you master the fundamentals, you could read a ton of code. It's just that 10% where you might find a little odd, one or two different things that you've never seen before. But by lesson 8, you'll have 90% of script reading under your belt. Fundamentals, right? Master your time, fundamentals. You could set Python up. Any Linux distro usually comes with the version of Python. Mac comes with the version of Python, Mac OS. Windows, you could download it from the software store, the Microsoft store. You could download it from python.org, which I'll be teaching everything that way through. If you download it through python.org for Windows, double click the install, you'll get an IDE called idle, and I'll show you that a little bit. Everything in this class will be taught through idle, not VS Code. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get to that later. But that's the programming goals. This is a fun-filled syllabus. Fun-filled ways how we learn, labs, lectures, live demonstrations, couple projects, couple quizzes, labs, all that fun stuff. Discussion board. For each group exercise, you are entitled to do the code yourself and critique at least 2 other people's code. So in essence, there should be 3 posts by you for every discussion board. 1, posting your code, and the other 2, reaching out to other students saying, hey, that's pretty cool how you did line number 3, or maybe you should try it this way, or maybe this, try this in the book. Not, it's discussion. It's not, I like your code. That is not a good comment. I will not count points for that, right? Critique, critical think, examine someone else's code. The more code you read, the better you get at it. And there's going to be a lot of similarities in this code week by week because you're all learning at the same pace, right? So keep that in mind. But there's going to be some superstars in this class that have been around Python maybe a little bit more than you have, and their code will be a little different, and you can learn something from it, pick something up. Critique 2 other people in every discussion. There's 300 points total in this class. 50 points on your final. Everything's 5 or 10 points up until your final. Pretty cut and dry there. Email me. I am pretty good with email. I try to get back with you within a day usually. That's about it. Any questions on the syllabus? Download it, read it. Love it, right? The calendar. For some reason, this is awful tough for people. I try to make it easy. You can download the calendar right here in Excel format. It's exactly what you're seeing in this window. Week, day, date, daytime, lesson, topics covered in the lesson. material to cover prior to class, topics covered in the class, like if we have a live session like today, assignments, and due dates. Well, this is when we first meet, week 1, January 17th. That's today. This is our lecture. Lesson 00 and lesson 01. Those are set up in your course lessons over here. 00 walks you through the course and setting up Python. Lesson 1 gets you into the material. Things to do prior to class, read the syllabus and the calendar, read lesson 1 material. Most of you probably didn't get there yet, but that's okay. We got this week, right? We'll be fine. Lecture, we're doing it now. Assignments, complete all of lesson 0, which is the setup, which is not graded, but you need it to perform anything in this class. Read the setup, read lesson 1, complete the introduction question, 5 points. It's due by 121. So when's 121? Anybody know? It's Sunday, right? And then look when lesson 1's due, the 4th, which is another Sunday in 2 weeks. Now, if you look, every section after that now, get it? Every Sunday, every other Sunday, your projects are due for that lesson. Lesson 1 is 2 weeks. Lesson 2 is 2 weeks. Lesson 3 is 2 weeks. Lesson 4 is 2 weeks. Every lesson is 2 weeks. Plenty of time. 2, this is a pro tip. New week, new lesson. Read the material. Perform the challenges while you read the material. Complete the reading. Do the group exercise, or wait until the second lecture when we do the group exercise together. Next week, we'll do the group exercise for lesson 1. Complete the group exercise. Use the group exercise as a template to complete your individual lab. Turn them all in on time. You will succeed. You could watch this video and listen to that again if you want, but that is a perfect way to win at this class. Right? Not everything's covered in the class. It's a little bit on you. This is a web class. And it just goes down the line week after week, lesson after lesson. Lesson 1, lesson 2 is 2 weeks, lesson 3 is 2 weeks, lesson 4 is 2 weeks, so on and so forth. We do have a break in here somewhere for spring break. Picks right back up where we left off. We just keep on moving. Any questions on the calendar? All right, cool. It's calendar, right? Now, off to the side, under calendar or syllabus in the week, there's also calendar. Well, guess what's there? You guessed it, same thing. It's the same calendar. They have us do a week breakout and the calendar. I just combined them. They're literally the same thing, in my opinion. Let's see, Q&A sessions, supplemental readings. There's some things there that are okay. Focus on the course material in the book that's mentioned in the zip. This is about normal. This is for me. My grades, of course, you always click on that and see the due dates for everything. The due dates match the calendar due dates, right? So that's easy. Course lessons. Here's how the courses are set up, right? So for this lesson, we have lesson 0 and lesson 1. Lesson 0, what to complete. Read all this fun stuff, the challenges, plagiarism coding, announcements. Here's some videos I posted about how to set up Python. Here's some more videos. Tutoring's available, and some stuff about Raspberry Pi if you want to use it. It's up to you. You don't have to, right? It's just an option. Let's go back to course lessons. Now we're into lesson 1. What to complete's always at the top. The challenges are here. We'll discuss that in a minute. The reading. If you click this little Python icon with the book, you will get a PDF of that chapter, of the supporting chapter for lesson 1. Now I have a link in the announcements for the entire book, or you can click on the icon and download it chapter by chapter. It's up to you. There's 44 pages in lesson 1. Minus the pictures and the white space, there's only 11 pages of reading. 5 of those pages are setting up Python. There's really not that much. Don't be afraid of reading. This book has a lot of white space, right? And a lot of pictures. So you got this, right? And every lesson's kind of the same laid out with a lot of pictures and a lot of white space, right? So don't worry about the reading. You can do it, and you need to do it to be able to do the challenges. Now, if you click this Lesson 1 reading heading right here, it'll take you to an online version of the book. Every one you click opens up in a new tab in like an HTML file. I do not like this. It's not my favorite. I suggest just going back to course lessons, lesson 1, clicking this icon, downloading the PDF, and reading it that way. But teach your own, right? So this brings us to the challenges. Do not click on them in here and complete them, because you will complete the default student ones. They're not yours. Yours, once again, go back to the announcements, and I'll show you how to do this. Scroll down here, copy this first link for lesson unit 1. I'll just dump it in a new tab. Your username here, mine, is Z Whiten. That's my username. I hit enter. It's going to take me to my challenges, which look like this. And you can see your name should still be up here in the link. And when you click on your challenge, it'll load. It has to go out to the web server and pull the page for you. It'll take a second. Sometimes these are slow, but it will populate eventually. Maybe. Never trust the demo gods, right? It always happens. There we go. So here's the desired output. It's always down at the bottom. That's what your little script, or script block or script or bit of code should output. Up top, this is important. Under your challenge, it'll help guide you on how to do this. The more complex ones have more guidance. This says write a script using the print function to match the desired output. Okay, cool. Print. Hello. We'll do capital W. Hello world. And I hit run. And it does not match. It says try again. Well, my output doesn't match because this W is lowercase and this is capital. Easy fix. Run it again. Nice job. Once you get the green, guess what you do? You hit submit. Game on, right? That's it. Your code has been submitted. Go back to your unit listing. You'll see that I submitted it and it's timestamped. You'll also see up here that your username is still part of the URL. Go as far as you can completing these. Of course, you can have your book open and do these while you read. That's the best way to do it. And there's actually parts in the books that point you to the challenges. So you can complete all these. As you complete them, I see how many attempts you've tried and if you greened it up. And that's how they're scored. Any questions on the challenges? Because a bunch of folks who aren't here are going to get this wrong because they didn't read the announcements and they're going to use your username here and not change it to their username. Those of you that are here, you'll probably be all right, right? But give it a try throughout this lecture. Let me know if you run into an issue and we'll correct it, right? That's what we're here for. So those are the challenges. Do not use this window. Use the links provided. And then here's the lab 1. This is your individual lab. So here we're going to bake some brownies, write a program. Do we have to finish all links or just work 1? You need to, what do you mean? When you say finish all the links, only complete the challenges by the due date for that unit. So this link, it says unit 1, which is lesson 1. And if you consult your calendar, you'll see that right here, week 2, lesson 1, lesson 1 challenges, they're due on 2/4/2024. So all the challenges for lesson 1 have to be completed by then. Unit 2's challenges have to be completed by 2/11, and so on and so forth. Is that clear? No, Corey, that is not correct. If you get it correct, if you get it correct on the first time or the 50th time, you still get credit. Even if you don't get it correct, but you tried, you get half the credit. Is that fair? No, that's perfect. Don't be sorry. That's perfect. Cool. Yeah, because so let me tell you a quick story. I once, a long, long time ago, in the beginning of the internet, I took a Java course and I did miserable. I did miserable because I wasn't good with managing my time. I didn't do the reading, and what the instructor was saying, I just didn't understand because I didn't do the reading. So years later, here I am getting paid for doing IT for over 20 some years. You have to read, you have to put in the time. There's only one way to learn this stuff. It's fingers on keys and butt in the seat. You're not going to learn it through osmosis. You're not going to hold up a book and instantly know Python. It just doesn't work that way. It's trial and error. But if you read beforehand, it removes a lot of the error. And if you have a decent instructor, like I hope I try to be, I'll remove some of the error for you too. And plus, it's fun. It's enjoyable. The minute that you write a script that checks to see if a machine's online, if the machine's online, checks to see if a certain file exists. If it exists, was it installed? If not, if it wasn't installed, install it, and then report back to you that it was installed and that you did a good job. But you do that on 100 machines plus all at the same time. It's a beautiful feeling. Automation, it's not the future. Automation is now. Those who know how to automate will always be employable. I work on a team of 30 some individuals, and only 3 of us know how to script. And guess which 3 will always have jobs? Guess which 3 have always had jobs? Yeah, if you could automate, you're a force multiplier. It's like really hiring 2 or 3 or 4 individuals when you get someone who could script well. But that's how this is all laid out. Let me go back to the lesson 1. Is that cool? We're good with the challenges. You understand that every 2 weeks that group of challenges is due for that lesson. Should be clear. Some weeks there's 10 challenges. Some weeks there's 20. Some weeks there's 7. Each of them take around an hour to an hour and a half to complete at the most, right? If you do them while you read, you'll knock them out. You'll be pros, right? This is your individual lab 1. Read the instructions, read the walkthrough, use the template provided, you will win. Here's the group activities. Many weeks, there's 2 scripts to write. A lot of the times, the second script looks a lot like the first script, except you just have to change a couple things. The beauty of writing your code is that you could reutilize it. And we'll learn how to do that for real in lesson 4. And then you have the quiz. The quiz is open book, 20 questions, 20 minutes. If you read, do both labs and the challenges, usually the quiz only takes you 5 or 10 minutes. But if you wait to the last minute and procrastinate and don't read and don't do the labs, and then you try to do the quiz, you may need your book open, and Control F will be your best friend, find. Quizzes are easy. I say that because if you do the work beforehand and take the quiz last, you'll win. In every lesson, there's a section of videos. supplemental videos. I've already recorded myself hours on end with little sections of what is pertinent in that lesson in that book. You'll see a lot of these are only 2-3 minutes long. They're supplemental. They go along with the book. They're there to help you. Every lesson has supporting videos. Just like every week, I'm going to host one of these. If people show up, awesome, right? One person shows up, I'm going to record something. Nobody shows up, I'm going to record something anyway, right? So the lab, the group activity, the quiz, the challenges. 4 things every lesson. This lesson's different because there's a 5th thing, and that's the introduction question. Introduce yourself, talk to 2 people, you get points, right? After that, you have the same 4 things for the next 15 weeks. You have challenges, group lab, individual lab, quiz, rinse and repeat. How's everybody feel so far? Pretty good?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good. And feel free to jump in with any questions along the way. So this is idle, right? Obviously, I installed Python 3.10 on this machine up in the top corner. This is the shell. It says idle shell. To open up a file that's like a notepad that we can start writing code, file, new file, or open, and you'll get something that looks like this, just a notepad. Here you can start testing stuff. And when you go to save it, you can either hit Control S or File Save. Save, I'll just save it to my desktop. You're supposed to call it something correctly. I'm just going to call it Lesson01 for now, right? And once you save it, the asterisk goes away up here in the corner. And then you could run this. You can either run it by selecting Run Module, or you can hit F5. In this case, I'll hit F5. When you hit F5, Python will load your code and run it and show it in the shell. Cool. You could also use the shell live. That's probably right. You can also run the shell and it'll run your code live. You could also use VS Code. I do not teach VS Code in this class because people load VS Code, start to load all these programming language modules, and all of a sudden VS Code is a hot mess because you installed too many modules and garbage on it and it doesn't work anymore. And I'm not going to deal with that. Plus, you don't need it to be successful. You can literally write Python code in Notepad. Like if you just open up Notepad, pull it over here and say print Notepad, file, save as, and I'll just dump it on my desktop. Why not? This machine's a mess. I love it. I'll call it Lesson1 Notepad, right? I'll just call it Notepad. But you save it from a text file to a .py file, a Python file, .py file extension. When you turn in your files or your labs to Blackboard, turn them in as .py. I don't grade Word. I don't grade PDFs. I can't run them. Submit them as .py. Should be a given. Someone always has an issue and sends me a PDF and it does no good. Always save it as a .py. The only difference is if you have something, a question of code, and you need to email me code, you need to email me a .txt file because Office 365 Outlook removes Python files. It finds them as malicious. So here you say file, save as, or save a copy as, and then just change this to text. It'll keep your name for you. It'll keep the location. You just hit save and send me the text file. That's if you have to email me code, send me a text file. Let's get back to this Notepad Joker, right? Now, on a Windows machine, you can hit Windows R, type in CMD, bring up the Windows shell, right? Here's the Windows shell. I can CD to my desktop, do a dir, right? All my garbage on my desktop, so much junk, right? Let me clear the screen. We gotta hit seal, I gotta do it right. Now from here, there's a couple cool things you could do. I can call on Python. I call Lesson01 and hit enter. And this is a different script, of course. What did I name that one? Lesson01 Notepad. Let's do that. Lesson01. There we go. So you can call on Python, call on your script afterwards and hit enter, and it'll run it. And we had our script simply print Notepad, and you see Python ran, interpreted my code, and printed Notepad to the screen. So another way you could run them, call on Python. Well, here you're in the shell again. You're in kind of like the idle shell here. And this is interactive. So once again, you can say print test from shell in win shell. And now you get your print for that. Python, the reason I showed you all these methods is because Python is accessible from everywhere. It's in your Windows shell, right? And to exit, you just hit exit, open, close parens, and now I'm back to the Windows shell, right? Exit this, you can type exit or just hit the X. So there's a couple different ways you can run your code. I suggest for this class, you use idle shell up here, file, open, and then you open the template. And here's the template that I provided for you inside of the announcements. You're going to cover what this is in lesson 0 and 1 in your reading. Change this, follow this methodology. So if you're doing your individual lab or group lab, it's first initial, last name. You could capitalize it, lowercase it, doesn't bother me, as long as you spell your name and correctly. Lesson 1, individual lab. Watch this. Cut and paste, cut, file, save as, paste it, hit save. And now you notice in the top left, the name of the file changed to match how you should name your file. Awesome. Then you fill the rest of this. Well, it's just me. I'm not writing a mortgage calculator. This is a short name of script. This will be lesson 01 notes. You can update the day. You can get rid of this if you want, so it's clean. Why do I put a header in scripts? Anybody know? Then you give the purpose. Why do I put a header in scripts? Anyone in class know?
Do you know what it does?
Excellent, right? You document your own code, but also if you write 100 scripts in a month and save them all over a shared drive or when you're working somewhere, you can do get content in PowerShell. You can search for them in many different ways in operating systems. And without opening the file, you could search a ton of files and find keywords in your header. Like if you know you always do purpose, colon, space, and something, you can literally search for purpose, colon, space to cover lesson material and find this script if you forgot what you named it. Right? grep, sed, and awk, remember those Linux commands? They all work. And you can find what you've written really quickly, especially over time, if you forget, right? And then you can just use the rest of this. Now, what happens if I run this? I saved it, I hit F5. Well, here you go in the shell. This is a variable. Variables could be any combination of strings and integers, which is basically keyboard stuff on a keyboard. Stay away from special characters. Stay away from starting with a space or a underscore or a special character. Name them what they are. The better descriptive your variable name, the more better for the operations that you're going to complete. For instance, if I was writing a mortgage calculator, I might put monthly payment, monthly interest, then call one monthly payment and interest, and then do amortized interest. If you name the variables what they are, it'll save you some headache in as you write your code. A variable, we'll talk about that in a minute, what it is though. A variable equals, I just said, print that string times 60 times. That's this right here. Print a line break, which that's that line right there. It's performing that action. It's printing that variable. And that variable is this. And then here you can write the rest of your code. And then at the bottom, to keep your code open, you can just put a print input, hit enter to close, and it pauses the shell. You notice it doesn't have the 3 greater thans waiting for input. You go over here, hit enter, you're back to your shell. Now, the script main body. This is where it gets fun, right? Here, we're going to print a line break, prompt the user using input. How old are you? We're going to change it to an integer, and then let's print it. But let's print, open, close, talk about print f strings. Strings, you are curly braces, user age, old. What this does, the print function will then print the string you are space followed by the variable which the user gave you input to fill, and then followed by a space old. Let's run it. You notice this asterisk up here. You have to save it first. Control S. Asterisk is gone. Hit F5 to run. How old are you? You printed my line. Ask me how old I am. I think I'm 46. 47? I don't know. It's one of the two. I'm one of the two. I gave it my variable. It stored it in here in this variable memory location. It made sure it was an integer, and then it printed it, calling on the variable. You are 46 years old. Is this line right here? And now we're at hit enter to close, waiting for it right here. My bad, that's my, there. What do you think? Not bad? Okay, so let's go over everything we went over, right? Went over the syllabus, no issues. Calendar, no issues. Went over the announcements, which you need to read them all because the book and the challenges and the template are in there, right? Those are the important things. We talked about learning critical thinking from the syllabus. You hear my mantra about AI. If you ask AI dumb things, it will give you dumb answers. AI is not designed to do that. You're supposed to ask it intelligent prompts so it has to think on your behalf or attempt to look like it's thinking and deliver you an answer you think you need, an answer you think you couldn't come up with yourself, but you can. I suggest writing your full script and potentially asking AI, check out this script. Is it good? And have it look at your code, sort of a debugger. It might tell you some outlandish things to do, some things that are not in the book. And guess what I would do? Not use them. Know of them. Do not use them. Use the fundamentals in this class. Master the fundamentals before you start using complex things in code. It'll get complex in week 4. Trust me. Week 4 or lesson 4 is difficult. Lesson 4 is the most difficult lesson in this class, functions. After that lesson, it's easy street. Getting used to Python this week, getting used to the shell, getting used to writing your script, getting used to saving it as a text file if you have to email me. Save it as a PY file to upload to Blackboard. The default's PY file, you got this, right? Talked about all the fun stuff. We talked about the challenges to replace your username with your username here, right? To use your username. Quizzes. We talked about how they're open book and they're best to do after you do the reading and the challenges and the labs. Chances are by then you won't need the book. Have your labs, which is a group lab and individual lab. How do you do those, right? Well, we'll get into that more next week. But for now, I know it's been an hour. I want to open up the floor to the people who are here. Any questions on anything I discussed so far? Could be about anything. If you have a question, somebody else does. None? Okay, here we go. Nothing so far. I'm good. Cool. Thanks, Corey. Everybody else good? Okay. Well, I'm not going to take a break because why? Right? We're already here. Let's get this stuff done.
Well, I guess I would want to check one thing real quick.
Let's do it.
I think I might have taken my classes out of order because I took a different class. Let me check real quick.
Did I teach it?
There you go.
Did I teach it?
No, it wasn't.
That
It
was
wasn't
horrible.
You. It was
That was
Annie
horrible.
Pagora. It was the intro programming logic.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Intro
So I was
logic is
just
important
wondering
enough.
what's kind of the difference between this class? Like, do we actually learn how to automate some stuff or?
Oh, you will. Yeah, by
Yeah.
lesson 7. Lesson 7, you'll have the fundamentals down. Lesson 8, the last 2 weeks, I go kind of off script. There's really no. I give you 2 weeks to work on your final,
Okay.
but also in the last 2 weeks, I present to you where to go from here in Python. I show you
Gotcha.
how to leverage, how to do web scraping, how to do some things in cybersecurity, how to parse logs, how to rip apart big text files, a little bit of data science, a little bit of how to manipulate large things in data, a little bit of Anaconda, a little bit of pandas. I show you the world of Python. Now,
Okay.
Python is just not for nerds or computer technophiles. Like I have a friend who's a biologist who uses Python to take the data from lake samples of chemicals and compute all those gigantic algorithms about the chemicals in the lake. He just wrote a script that does it instead of doing it by hand. There's a
That's
lot of
pretty cool.
things. Yeah, you could do drone automation, massive Python.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to make sure this wasn't just like another, programming class. I wanted to make sure it was actually, a scripting class, like you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to get into it. I'm going to tell you like what things really are. Like, what is a variable? You want to start class right now? We can. You guys want to? No, we're going to anyway. We're going to anyway. But
sure.
Okay. So let me light up lesson 1 here. Let me pull up my notes here, and then we'll talk about it because this is the theory behind where everything rolls. So what you're going to see in this class is you're going to see this book and you're going to hear all this stuff and you're going to go, okay, well, what does it mean? What good is it? Right? Well, a computer is what? Like let's get into it, right? Let's open up a Windows command prompt, pull over the shell and do 2 plus 2. Well, 2 plus 2 is not recognized. Well, 2 plus 2 doesn't know what that is, right? But if you go into PowerShell and do 2 plus 2, it does 4. Well, if you exit PowerShell and go into Python and you do 2 plus 2, it tells you 4 too. So what is a scripting environment? A scripting environment like Python and PowerShell these two languages are what's called objective. They're objective-based programmers or programming. So what does that mean? What does that really mean? Objects. Well, think of this. This coffee cup. Do you agree it's a container? Yeah. A container is what type of an object? Well, a cup is a certain type of object. Container.cup. Okay. What color is it? Container.cup.color equals black. Container.cup.empty equals true or false. Container.cup.lid equals true or false. Straw equals true or false. Handle true or false. You could design an object in 3D space with critical thinking and answering questions. Now, if I have container.cup with all these different parameters about the color, the lid, the straw, yes or no, the handle, can I create any type of cup? Container.cup.material, glass, ceramic, plastic. See what I'm saying here? If you wrote code to design a cup and answered all these parameters or gave all these different parameters to this object, you can create infinite amount of cups with a couple lines of code of various different kinds. Let's simplify this. A username. Is it an object? Think about your Columbus State username. Is it an object? Is it a digital object? Anybody? What do you think? Yeah. Does your username have a parameter called email, true or false? And do you have an email address that is your username? Object-oriented computing. One object used many times in different variants. That's all it is. It sounds all wild and crazy and scientific, but at the end of the day, there's infinite type of objects, which is hard to wrap your mind around. But there's two main ones in Python. Right out the gate, you're going to have strings and integers. What are integers? Numbers. Well, what type of numbers are there? Well, there's a float, which is a decimal number, like 1.1, and whole numbers, like 1. And you could do math. Let's check this out. Well, I'll get out of here. I'll go back to the shell. You could do math on whole integers. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Well, Python has a type command. You could do type 2, and it comes back and tells you that the type of object is an integer. The class of that object is an integer. Okay. Classes of objects have certain parameters and certain methods, functions, you could perform on those type of objects. I can check this out. What if I did a type and I threw a string at it, throw an S, I hit enter, the class is a string. Well, what's the difference? Well, let's try to add a 2, which is an integer, plus a string. Ooh, I get a trace back, an error. Read them from the bottom up. Type error. Okay, so that tells me right there, not typing with your fingers, object type error. This is telling you that you use 2 different types of objects and you tried to run an operand on them, you try to add 2 different types of objects. You can't do that. That's what that tells you. You have to have an integer and an integer or a string and a string. Well, we already proved that 2 plus 2, my bad, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Well, what if we did S plus T? Yes, you can add like objects, but you can't add unlike objects. Objective programming. Also, we're going to learn that there's methods or functions that you could perform on strings that you can't do to integers and vice versa. And we're also going to learn that there's complex objects, lists, tuples, dictionaries, files. Each of these objects have parameters, and each parameter is for that class of object. Isn't that cool? Who learned something so far? Or did you guys know all that already? It's okay if you did, I'll be happy.
No, I didn't know that.
So remember this class and what you're going through in college, you know, you're here because you're the master of the machine. The machine doesn't tell you what to do. You tell it what to do. You're here to be IT professionals. IT professionals know how things work. They just don't leverage computers to get something done. Those are called users. IT professionals support users. Two types of people, well, really three. People who use data or people who allow people to use data. Both people create data. Admins and users create data. But pros allow people to use data in a mystical way. Remember that. We're here because we like computers, they're fun, we can critically think, and we're going to understand how this stuff works. So let's say I wanted to put something in a variable. Well, what is a variable? Well, let's just call it var1. var1 equals nothing. Open, close quotes, enter. Now, if I did a type on var1 and hit enter, it's a string because I gave it quotes with nothing in it. So it thinks that it's a string, and that's fine. If I did var2 equals nothing, or varf2, it says invalid syntax. It needs something, right? So let's do var2 equals 2. Well, if I did a type on var2, it's an integer. Cool. Can I add var1 and var2 together? Sure can't, because var1 is a string and var2 is an integer. Now, can I add two var2s together? That is the power of an object. A variable is an object in memory that's reusable. var2 equals 2. And I said var2, 2 plus 2 equals 4. You notice I didn't get an error saying you can't add itself. It treats each var2 as its own object. Let's take a look at this. Let's do a command called id, and we'll do var2. That is the binary memory location of where var2 is sitting for use in Python process right now. Cool. That's proof that var2 exists in memory and is ready to be used. So what happens if I close the shell and restart idle? Close the shell. Don't worry about that. Restart idle. What happens if I call on var2 now? What's going to happen? It doesn't exist because I closed the shell where it was defined. It was defined in memory in that shell. Then I closed the shell, which cut the program and killed the memory, erased it, so it doesn't exist anymore. The beauty of a variable is it's a temporary, think of it as a container. It's a temporary container that can hold almost anything. It can hold an integer. It can hold an equation. It can hold a string. It can hold another program. Variables are nothing more than a memory allocation that you could call on after being defined over and over and over again. Pretty cool? I think it's cool. I love this stuff, right? So let's have some fun with this stuff, right? So also you're going to learn about how to help yourself. The best thing in the world is self-help. Unless you have a really good therapist, I guess. So there's a help function, right? And say if we want to get help on print, well, print's another function within Python. So you have to wrap it in quotes, either single or double. Doesn't make a difference what they are, as long as they match, right? So here's help on print. You'll see that it's a built-in function, and it'll tell you print followed by a value. Then this is not mandatory, but it separates objects by default with a space, and then it ends with a hard return, and the standard output is to your system standard output, which in this case is the shell. And flush equals false. I never had a mess with flush, so we won't worry about that right now. But help does just that. It'll help you. Help is so well defined that you could do things like help. What if you throw 2 at it? It squeezed a bunch of lines and you double click it. Well, it's an integer object. We know that 2 is an integer because we did type on 2 and it told us it was a class of integer. And then it rambles on forever of everything you could do with an integer. Positive, negative, all kinds of fun stuff. One could say you could teach yourself Python by using help commands if you knew the other commands to get help on. But you don't, so neither did I. A book helps. That's why we have a book. Always leverage online help within Python because here's the deal. Some of you are going to go work in data centers. You're going to run up to a data center stack, pull out the KVM, keyboard, video, and mouse, flip open the monitor, access the server, start typing away, and you have to write a script on the fly. You didn't bring your book. It's at home. You can't access the internet because you're on a server, and servers shouldn't access the internet. Yeah, you heard me. Servers shouldn't access the internet unless you're a web server, but that only goes one way. So you can't get to Google. You can't find out what you need, but you're in the middle of writing a script and you forget how to do something. Well, if Python's loaded on the machine and you're writing a Python script, you could use help and read on it right there. Because by default in the standard load of Python, the help files are loaded. Right? So learn how to use help. And it's as simple as help and then type in what you want help on. It's not as robust as the Google. Some of the syntax is a little funny, but you're going to see me use it throughout this course. So throughout this course, you're going to learn something new about help every couple lessons, right? But help's pretty cool. And this is all the fun stuff. We already talked about type. This just shows you that there are different types of objects, and this is a float. A float is nothing more than an integer with a decimal place, right? That's important. Python does not like things like this. Does not like 1,000,000. Doesn't know what it is. Doesn't know if it's a string or an integer. If you want to do 1 million as an integer, guess what? You don't use commas, right? Those are for humans to read, not machines. Big difference. And if you wanted that as a string, you just do type, quote. Like if you were to print out 1 million, as opposed to use it to do some equation, a string is a graphical representation of a symbol. An integer carries the value of that numeric symbol. If you think about it, that makes sense. Like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about 5 and 5. Well, one's a string, one's an integer. They both show me 5, except string is a representation of 5 with no numeric value. It's interpreted to have a value, but I cannot add 5 to the symbol of 5 because it's not the same object type. Does that make sense? Isn't this stuff cool? It's almost like you don't need to learn it, but you never really thought about it, and you never really knew that machines operate like this. But once you know they operate like this, you know the rules, and now you can bend them. Now I can start writing fun code, right? So we're gonna have all kinds of fun with this stuff. I already talked about that. So we already talked about, let's talk about print. So print, as of Python, I think 3.8 or 3.10, they introduced F strings. This book does not have that in there, but next week I will go in detail about printf, which is formatted strings. It's the new common way to use print. Your book uses, it's only a year old, if that, believe it or not, a couple years old, maybe 2. So it's not that old. You'll still see how this book teaches print everywhere. But there's a newer way, and we'll discuss that next week. But this just prints what's your name. Doesn't prompt you for input because input collects input and needs to put it somewhere in a variable. Here, print what's your name just states what's your name, right? No big deal. How to print multi-line things. This is basically a multi-line. You wrap it in triple quotes inside a print. Print triple quote, hit enter, keep printing, hit enter, prints out a multi-line. Why would you want to do this and not just do one long line that goes on forever? Nobody knows? That's okay. I didn't either. When you access the shell to do most server work, shells are restricted to how many symbols go across the screen. If you surpass that, you may not be able to scroll to read them. So when you write scripts or programs, it's best practice to keep them in less than half a screen in length, because not every resolution and not every shell allows you to write 1,000 keys or allows you to scroll. Were you aware of that? Because it will get you if you use hardcore Linux or you become like a hardcore Linux or core Windows admin. It's best to write multi-strings that maybe go 3/4 of the screen in a shell, because a lot of times that scroll function to go right or left is not there. Just be mindful of that when you write tools, right? So here you have all your different prints and what's wrong, and you have these things called escape characters. You see how idle kind of tells you that this is wrong? It says this is green, and then this is black text and another single quote, and then that's green. You notice that single quote, Python's done. It'll break. Let's prove it. Doesn't like it. Says invalid syntax, the syntax error. Don't worry, 99% of what you get wrong is going to be syntax errors. How do you fix that? Well, easy. You just don't use single quotes everywhere for this one, right? Now, you can negate it, but let's do this. Works just fine. What's your name, right? Because it looks for that pair of quotes, double, closed, right? You'll read about that in the book too. Well, what if you want to print something like he said, double quote, right? Of course, you could change these to single quotes and not have to do that, but Python print allows you to what's called escape. You can escape characters. What this backslash does in front of the double quote, it removes what's following special meaning. So it tells Python, remove the special meaning of the quote and just put it there as a string. It escapes the character, right? So when you hit enter, you get the hi. He said hi, hi, right? There's a bunch of these in your challenges. They're fun. Understand how to use escape characters. Like if you wanted to print a backslash, like if you went to do this just once, you'll see the whole thing turns green because I removed the special meaning of the quote. Well, what if I put a space? Then it's fine. But what if I want to print a backslash followed by the end? Well, you just do two backslashes. The first backslash removes the special meaning of the second backslash, and then it's followed by just a quote. Works like a charm. See all the fun stuff you're learning? Now remember we did a help on print. I did a help on print and it says print value separator and then end. End is a hard return. You notice every time when I printed, it did a space and then printed what I wanted. That's that. Pretty cool, right? Now, when you look at this, you could also add new lines into print with the backslash n between your two string objects or between any objects. So what you get here is you'll have line 1, then line 2. Cool. Let's use this again. And what if I did another backslash n followed by a backslash n, bunch of them? That's what you get. You get a line 1 space hard return, hard return, hard return, hard return, hard return, hard return. So that's a cool way how to format your print strings with adding hard returns. Well, guess what a backslash t does? Tabs. A tab in Python is usually 4 spaces. Cool, right? And these are all kinds of fun stuff. Here's how to print raw strings. This is sort of important if you need raw data. Like if you wanted to print out how to use the backslash n but not actually do one, you would call on the little r, print little r, print raw string. Here's the raw string I want printed. And then it prints the backslash n. Well, what would happen if I remove that little r? Well, the special meaning for the backslash n is there, and it removes it, but it also does a new line. So raw string, how often do you use these? It depends upon what data types you're leveraging and what you're trying to print out, really. Very rarely do I use print raw string, but it's cool that it's available, right? It's good. It's one of those things that are good to know. Any questions so far? Because I already tricked you into learning ID, type, print, what a variable is, math, integer, basic objective programming, and how to get help. So you've already learned 8 things without even really knowing. What do you think? Pretty cool? Because this is pretty much how the rest of the course is going to go. How's it feel? Feel all right? Good pace?
I liked it so
Yeah.
far. I tried the
Yeah, feels good.
oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you can keep talking.
I was just gonna say I tried the challenges so far, and I kind of like how much it breaks it down and makes it so easy to understand each section that you're doing. So
Cool. That's important. They're not that bad if you have a little bit of Python knowledge for the first couple lessons, but also I teach not really by the book. I teach you what's in the book, but I also teach you how it works under the hood. You know, understanding that these are just electrons in memory that are holding a value is pretty important, right? And if you call on a variable, like if I go to call on a variable like we'll name it var4 and hit enter, it'll tell me it's not defined yet. You're right. You have to define it before you call on it. So how you define it? You give it a value. var4 equals Steve. And now when I call on var4, it returns me Steve from memory. You have to define before you call, which makes sense. You can't call a phone number if you don't know it, right? You can't get to an address of someplace if you don't have the address. That's all it is. It's a memory address. You have to know it, define it before you call on it. That's it. A lot of fun stuff. Well, what if I do this though? What if I do var4 equals Larry? What do you think is going to happen now? Oh, it's Larry. I replaced the value of var4. Look at var4. Let's do an ID of var4 right now. Do we agree that var4 currently holds the string value of Larry?
yeah,
Okay, that's the memory location. Now I'm going to say var4 equals Tim. And now I'm going to do an ID of var4. What changed? The memory location, because I changed the value of the variable. Now, for those you hacker types or soon to be cybersecurity professionals, sometimes malware will like to change the value of variables to try to confuse either the computer or the user to accidentally running the malware. They use something called obfuscation, and they use different techniques to change the value in memory unbeknownst to the user. Here, we're not doing that. We're learning how to use variables and how to set places in memory to use in code. But remember, for every rule, you could break it, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll discuss those fun things as the course goes on. But we're primarily focused on fundamentals. But let's dive a little bit deeper into variables now, right? So what are they? Well, we know that they hold a value of something in memory. Okay. We know that we can call on them more than once. We know they should stay the same unless we change them, unless we tell the computer or the Python to change them. We know that they exist for as long as our script is running, or as long as our shell is running without us restarting the shell. Because you can do this. Shell, restart shell. And now if I go down here and do var4, it doesn't know what it is because it removed everything from memory and restarted my shell. Be aware, right? You can do that. Cool stuff. So what makes a good variable name? Descriptive names. Like I is a bad one. Name23 is kind of weird. Underscore part is kind of gross. Sometimes underscores get computed incorrectly. I've never ran into a scenario where that happened, but I have heard that it happens only when they lead a variable name and special characters, stuff like that. But often it's best to name them exactly what they are, either using camel case, which is like capital letter, like first name F, last name L. So your variable would look something like first, last name equals quote quote. Then you can fill that in with what your first and last name, right? You could do fun stuff like that. We're gonna in lesson 5. We're gonna dive deep into strings and learn how to manipulate data on the smallest part, which is a string, which is the basis for data science because most of data in one time or another is a string. And if you learn how to manipulate strings on the smallest level, like you do in the fundamentals, you could either manipulate it on the smallest level or the grand scale. Python doesn't matter. You give it either one little tiny thing or a billion of those things, it'll do that task over and over. So this is a gateway drug for data science as well, right? You'll see that in lesson 5. It's a lot of fun. But naming your variables what they are is a handy thing. In this class, we're using variables. Your first lab is a brownie recipe. You're thinking, oh, brownie recipe, big deal. No, it's formatting. It's how to collect data from an individual, critically think how many ingredients you need to create a recipe, and then giving those ingredients back correctly formatted, because you cannot have 2.64 eggs the same. If I give you 6 different eggs, you will not get 2.64 eggs twice that are the same. You have to learn how to format, which round up eggs, drop the float, right? You'll learn how to do that all through lesson 1. Correctly formatting output is insanely important. You will learn that critically thinking using Python is easy. You will also learn that getting the output to be formatted properly how you want is sometimes difficult. But with print F strings and things like that, it's a lot easier than it ever has been. So you're coming in at a great time in Python, a great time in scripting, on where performing output is relatively simple. But we'll learn all that stuff. So let's take a look at this variable, right? We're going to call a variable my name, and we're going to have it equal the string Heather. I'm going to hit enter. My name is in memory. How do I know? Well, I could do an ID of my name. Unnecessary, but fun to do, right? I can see it's loaded in the memory. I can call on my name directly, Heather, and now I can use it in the print statement. This is the basic way of printing a variable. You call on print, have a string. At the end of your string, you add a comma, a space, followed by your variable name. And then you get, hi, Heather. Now you could also use a print F string. And right here, you can say hi, comma, space, curly braces. What do we name this? My name, my underscore name, close curly braces, end, and hit enter. You get the same output. F strings are newer. They're a little cleaner. They're kind of easier to read than all those commas and quotes and knowing when to put your quotes and knowing when not to. F string, yeah, hit me.
I was just curious. Is it possible that the challenges on the website run on an older version of Python,
Yes,
since
and
that's
they
newer?
do. And they
Okay,
do.
I was curious because I tried to do an F string and it told me that it didn't work.
Doesn't know.
So I was just a little confused on that.
Well, here's a funny thing, that what you think you're using Python in is actually a Java interpreter that understands the output of your Python code. So it's really not, yeah. It's, hey, we adopted it. It's not my first choice, but it's what we got, right? So we got to use it.
Fair enough.
But I'm going to show you newer ways, and I understand that they won't work in the challenges, but I'm still going to show you the newer, more elegant, faster, more legible ways of leveraging Python. But good point. Yeah, they don't work in the challenges. And from now on, I'll make a mental note to say that before I teach you guys something new that won't work in the challenges. F strings, print format strings won't work in challenges. There you go. There you go. It's recorded now too. But yeah, good call. Now, all this formatting stuff, how to format strings and output, I'll let you beat yourself up on those. Until next week, we'll do a deep dive on those because I want you to become more familiar with just using Python, having fun with it, getting input, we'll get input next. Formatting is an art form. I will post the 10 best ways to format in an announcement, and you can just cut and paste those and use those for the rest of your life because that's what I do. There is a difference between calling on the format command and round. Round, sometimes, even when you say round to the second place, if you do money, sometimes it'll give you something like this. Let's just say we have a variable and it equals 5.00. And if I do a type out of my variable, you'll see that it is a float. It's a decimal number. Now you'll see that if I say round, and I'll call on my variable var, and I'll round it 2 spaces and hit enter, it does round it, but .00 rounds to 0. Not helpful when you're doing money and you need those 2 cents at the end, right? That's where format walks into place. There's a couple different ways how to use format, right? But this right here, print. Now this gets kind of strange. You throw how you want to format your integers in front of the dot format method. This is a method, also called a function of a class. The class of object is an integer, and you're going to format your integer whole number followed by a decimal place, and then format 2 decimal places. So if I change this to var, it formats it, and it gives you my 2 places to the right of the decimal place. There is a time to use format. There is a time to use round. And there's also something called pretty print, which is a module external to Python. But later on in this course, when we start talking about importing different commands, I'll show you what pretty print can do for you too. And a lot of folks use it, so that's why I'm mentioning it. I don't use it, but it's available and it helps you do fun stuff. Super cool stuff though, right? More formatting. Here's the individual lesson, group lesson. We'll talk about these next week. We're going to do the group 1 activity. For those of you who show up to this course, we'll do it together. I'll post a video next week of the group lesson, but you're still going to have to turn in individual code to the best of your ability and then communicate with 2 people for the group lesson. So that's kind of all the notes that we're going to cover in Python today. Before I pivot over to the group lesson, what do you think? What does everybody think so far? Pretty cool? Not so cool? Because what we cover so far? What's the variable? Object orientation, strings, integers, floats, types of objects, doing some operands, some math, plus, minus, modulo, which is the remainder, division, ID, type, print string, variable, print with a variable, round, a little bit of float. Covered a lot already. You're going to use these things build on build every week. And by lesson 15, I think you're going to have over 400 commands under your belt and know how to use each one like a samurai. And it comes in time. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm telling you that because we just covered 10 or 12 things right now, and they're really not that bad when you take them in little bites, right? So is anybody worried about the pace of this class? Every lesson is 2 weeks, plenty time, if you schedule your time correctly, right? Everybody feel good?
Yep, feeling good.
That's one. How about everybody else?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the group activities, there's 2 here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let me show you how I do group activities, right? We're going to do it next week, but I'll show you how I do them. I go, all right, I read the whole thing. I understand what I'm supposed to do. I'll do this. Copy. I open up my template. Right after my purpose, I'll do 3 single quotes, print, 3 single quotes, hit home. Then I'll just make it all on one screen so I can read it. Now this is what I'm supposed to do. The customer is in a store to purchase 3 items. Okay, 3 items. Let's get rid of this. 3 items. So variables. Item 1, item 2, item 3. Cool. 3 items. They equal something. Okay, 3 items. Got that out of the way. Which asks the user for a price of each item. Okay. Well, how do I get the price of something? Input. Make it look pretty with a slash tab. Right? So I'm saying, what is the price of item 1? I'm asking the user. They'll be presented with that question. When they hit enter, it'll be stored in the item 1. There's a problem. Input's default value is a string. You're going to learn that in the reading. How to force that, you can say float. So now, we're going to test this out in a minute. So now I can just do this. Let's see if this works, right? I'm going to call it save. I'll just save over my template, but you'll want to call it group exercise, right? I'm going to hit F5 to run it. What is the price of item 1? I cannot stand this. This bothers me. Write something after your line break. Let the user know they're interacting with some scripts or some code. It doesn't cost anything to print a welcome. As a matter of fact, you could say welcome. Go up here, create a variable called welcome, and you could change this every time when you write a new code. You could literally put a string that says this is a receipt script, right? So now you can say welcome, and you could print a couple of new lines to give it some space. And now watch what the difference is here. This is a receipt script. Here is ample location to put directions for your user. So they're not just being punched in the face with, what is the item of number 1? I don't know. Why am I entering an item? Well, it's as a receipt script. See what I'm saying? Guide the user. Learn how to guide the user from a very early age today. And here, what if I put in 4, enter? It took it, even though I said a float. What if I put in Tim? Broke, because it's not a float. Don't worry about that for now. We're going to learn how to do error correction at a later date and input validation as well. Let's rerun this. I'll say 4.44. I'll say 3.35 and 1.11. There we go. Sort of like it, don't like it. has a tab, but let's put in a dollar sign. And now when I run it, the dollar sign's there and it looks like I'm entering money. A little cleaner, right? 4.44, 3.21, 1.23. Cool. Well, then what do we have to do? Well, we have to do the tax. We'll do that next week. But check this out. Variable tax equals 0.05, right? Total. Well, total equals, check this out. This is really cool. Item 1 plus item 2 plus item 3. Now we'll say subtotal because there's no tax. Well, now if I want to get the total equals subtotal plus tax. I still have to figure out what the tax is though, which we will do. But this is our 90% of our script is done for the group lab. Now you just have to output it, right? Print it. Pretty cool stuff. Because now I can say print, and we'll just test this. We'll say here is the total subtotal. Now I know what you're thinking. Do I really need to do all this? And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. And there's more than that even. Here's your subtotal. Well, you can also do print. Here's your subtotal, comma, item 1 plus item 2. Here's your subtitle for only item 1 and 2. You could do things like that. You could do mathematical operations with variables inside of print. Let's see if that works. Well, this is 4.44, 4.4, whatever, it doesn't matter. Well, yeah, it works. Works like a boss, doesn't it? So my subtotal is way big. I have to round that or format it properly. So we still have to format it. And then the subtotal for item 1 and 2 is 657. Is that correct? 4 plus 3 is 7. 4 plus 1 is 5. 4 plus 2 is 6. 657. I need to add my dollar signs and format it and clean it up a little bit. But we'll do that next week. Not too bad, right? Variable, input, store the input in the variable, use the variable in some type of mathematical equation, print out the new variable holding all our new value. Not too bad. And most of you probably didn't read the book yet or perform any of the challenges, but now I set you up for success. You still have to read. You still have to do the challenges. You still have to do the group work. But now you have the knowledge to do it, or at least partial knowledge. I don't go over everything that's in the book. I might skip 1 or 2 small things, might forget, I'm human. But I try to cover most things. But remember, there's also videos already in the class, and this video will be posted as well. And next week we'll pick up right where we left off and tear this thing a new one. But until then, how do you feel? Is it good? Good. Be honest, because we can adjust the speed, we can adjust a lot of things. Ample time for success in this class as long as you schedule your time to be successful. I know you have other courses, but here's the caveat. Learning how to script and code literally turns you into a force to be reckoned with. You can do all kinds of things. You could access 100 websites at the same time, scrape the data you need, pull it down to a location, run a script to parse through that information, create a Twitter bot, and then tweet out a thought about what you just scraped from 10 different news feeds. You could do that every minute, every 10 minutes, every time when a website changes. But you don't have to do it. Your script could do it for you. Things like cron jobs in Linux and Unix, or scheduled tasks in Windows. You could write a script and dump it in a task scheduler like cron or scheduled tasks, and tell it to run every 5 minutes, every 5 seconds, every 5 hours and 42 seconds, every fifth Wednesday of the March in 2028. You can do whatever you want. That's the beauty of scripting. You can get things done without even being there. You could run your backups. You could run flushing of databases when there's no users between certain hours. You could turn everything into a variable to check. Check if anyone's logged in. No one's logged in. Cool. Don't allow any new logins for the next 5 minutes. Run these routines in the database. When it's done, turn back on connections. You ever go to visit a website and you get those things, well, right now we're closed for maintenance? Yeah, that's maintenance. You get to learn how to do all kinds of fun-filled automation. But these are the fundamentals. We're going to get you there, right? You got to learn how to crawl before you could run, I think. But anyway. But this is it for this evening. We went over the entire class setup, expectations. We talked about the use of AI, which I think is not necessary in this course at all, because this is really elementary. It's the fundamentals. I could see if we're doing some complex, crazy algorithm stuff, and I taught it really like trash, and you needed some extra help, you could use AI as a tutor. You still can, but in reality, if you read the book and rip through this, you should be all right. Pretty cool stuff. I'll open the floor up. I'll go ahead and I'll stop the recording for now. Let me